After so much time, so much build, Hogan and Sting finally clashing for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship inside the Cow Palace. The final showdown. Sting will finally destroy the NWO and... Wait, what's that? They already did this at Starrcade 1997, gave everybody a dodgy finish, did another dodgy finish, and then held the title up the night after Starrcade 1997, their most bought pay-per-view in existence? Holy fucking shit, I can't figure out why WCW rapidly eroded shortly after Starrcade 1997. Sure, they were still winning in the ratings war for a bit after this, but then WWF came roaring back, pounding them, fisting them, beating them into the goddamn ground, and even though both companies were trading ratings victories, going up and down, all around, come on defense, work, by the time we got to the late summer of 1998, well, even Goldberg couldn't help keep WCW neck and neck with WWF. Even though things were kind of close, it was pretty obvious that Vince McMahon had found the winning formula because WCW had their goddamn... They had it. They had WWF beaten, dead to goddamn rights. Then they fucked it up. Good job, you fucking idiots. God, I love WCW, but I will never forgive the people in charge, anybody, whoever came up with the idea of Sting not being tan enough and not being deserving of winning the championship at Starrcade. I can't even fucking form a goddamn thing anymore because it still pisses me off to this very day. But there was a solid undercard before we got to Sting Hogan having their unnecessary rematch when Starrcade 97 should have been it. So anyway, I'm John Renton with the retro view of WCW Superbrawl 8 at the Cow Palace. Same venue as the previous year's edition. And, well, Hogan versus Piper and Hogan versus Sting, you really honestly could... You could just replay either match and actually you could just close your eyes and it basically sounds like the same goddamn thing. Or you could watch both of them and realize, shit, Hogan and Piper were continuing their goddamn feud that would never ever end. Yes, it would go on and on, my friends. And then you can watch this one and realize, shit, they built Sting up for how long? Not having him do much of anything, so come out and attack, be the international man of mystery. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And he's got a bat, and he will hit you with the big black bat. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Yeah. The Cow Palace, it was pretty much sold out, 12,600 some odd fans. Hogan versus Sting 2 for championship. I believe that somebody that was not of this planet came up with that tagline. The dark match, by the way, was Ultimo Dragon versus Shiryu. Kaz Hayashi, that's who the hell that was. Sorry. Still a little bit pissed off after seeing this because WCW really could have won the war. I never understood the stage setup because it was, they had the big LED type boards spread out here. They had the entranceway and it just seemed like if they hadn't had such a wide stage, they could have probably added another 500 to 600 people, possibly, maybe not another 1,000, but the stage was just so goddamn weird. It was just such a weird setup. I mean, granted, the Cow Palace is a strange setup anyway, but a historic venue like that. So... Hogan versus Sting clips with a weird, creepy voiceover, doing the thing where the children, the children are roaming and playing and I don't know, people are dying of dysentery while Sting is trying to eventually get, I don't know what I'm going on about, while Sting is coming down, descending from the sky, they're doing the weird laser pointer thing. This is Sting. And Shivani Hina and Mike Tenay calling the action. We get Booker T versus Rick Martel for the TV Championship. Rick Martel making an unexpected but not unwelcome return to wrestling. Coming to WCW, he faced off against Booker T at Sold Out 98, which I did retro review. You can check that out. Check out my retro reviews of Starrcade 97, Sold Out 98, and then this. And you'll get a pretty good idea of me just absolutely losing my shit at the monumentally dumb decisions that WCW would continue to perpetrate upon the viewers. Rick could, I don't know if Rick Martel would have lasted in a prominent spot beyond the summer of 98, and that's no disrespect to Rick Martel, who was in his mid-40s by this point, and was doing pretty goddamn well for himself. He'd been, AWA champion, team with Tom Zank, for what that's worth, carrying Tom Zank, basically. I hate to speak ill of the dead, but Tom Zank wasn't exactly great outside of teaming up with people that were better than him, which were a lot of people. But Rick Martel, after being in WWF for a while, had kind of gone by the wayside because, you can only beat your body up for so many goddamn years, even if you take care of yourself. But he showed up, he faced off against Booker T, it sold out in 98, won the TV championship soon after this, got put through, I believe, a car window of some kind, or a door, whatever it was, by Perry Saturn before this, but somehow was still the champion and seemed to be fine. The crowd was up for this. The flock shows up because Saturn was going to face the winner of this, and originally Rick Martel was booked to win over Booker. But unfortunately, a hip toss into a flummoxed hip toss, nobody's fault, these things just happen. Rick Martel tore a ligament in his knee, I believe, and they had to finish up the match. Rick knew he could finish the match, but he was fucked because he'd been doing this for quite a while. They end up with a Harlem sidekick, 1, 2, 3. Nice 10.5 minute match, then Saturn immediately attacks afterwards. You have to wonder how long Rick Martel would have been the TV champion. Maybe for a couple of months. They were tossing the titles around like goddamn crazy, as I will illustrate a little bit later on. But yeah, you have to wonder if Rick Martel could have continued to provide for WCW. I mean, because he came back for a few matches in I think the late spring, early summer of 98. Got injured again. Did French language commentary for them for a few months or maybe about a year. Did have, I think, one retirement match in Hawaii, I want to say. And then that was it. So he retired in 99. Injury or not, I mean, he had a hell of a goddamn career. One of the unsung heroes and somebody that, quite frankly, should have won gold in WWF. And I mean singles gold. Because he did win the tag team championships with as part of Strike Force, but nevertheless. Booker and Saturn then had their match. Rick Martel was taken to the back and diagnosed with, well, your knee's fucked. TV title match, Saturn kept attacking him. Booker kept coming back. The thing is, though, when you do this kind of stuff and you have somebody wrestle twice and then you have somebody wrestle that person who wrestled first immediately afterwards, your clock is ticking. And that was an issue with this pay-per-view. This, I think, could have been about 4 minutes shorter, but it was like Saturn's going to beat him down, but then he couldn't end up winning. So it kind of made Saturn look like a bit of a chump that he couldn't beat somebody that had already wrestled and had been through a pretty grueling match. Booker did eventually get the Harlem sidekick again, 1, 2, 3. We're 32 minutes into the pay-per-view. Disco Inferno versus La Parka. Now, they'd had their scraps, and let's be perfectly honest, La Parka doing the whole, thing and whatever, and doing all this and doing all the, and no, I can't really do the La Parka dance because I'm not very good or whatever, but you do the Disco Inferno thing. Yeah, people are going to try to gift that shit, assuming that enough people actually watch this to really give a shit. But yeah, La Parka, just doing all this stuff. I'm not going to do the gyrations, by the way, because I'm too old to do that. And nobody wants to see that. I don't even want to do it. La Parka deserved better than having to carry Disco Inferno for an almost 12-minute pay-per-view match. 12 minutes. Who thought Disco Inferno should get a near 12-minute pay-per-view match? Who thought Disco Inferno should have gotten a pay-per-view match in 1998? I just want to talk. There was at one point the chair got put in for La Parka is the chairman of the WCW committee, or just the chairman of WCW, and he sets Disco on a chair while the referee is kind of blinded. He's like, I'm blinded by the light. I'm watching a Disco Inferno match and I want to go right into the night. Anyway, then he sets up Disco right there. Then they battle a bit, and then La Parka gets launched into the chair, and then the Chartbuster, the stunner, a lame stunner because Disco couldn't wrestle. 1, 2, 3. Poor La Parka. I mean, he's had a hell of a career anyway, but good God. Mean Gene with J.J. Dillon about referee Nick Patrick. So Nick Patrick, it was debated, did he screw up the Starrcade 1997 main event? Yes, but he was one of many. And he's reinstated, but he's not going to be part of the main event. The crowd boos. The crowd probably booed because they didn't want to see talking segments on a pay-per-view in a historic venue that saw many great moments. And also, they had seen a Disco Inferno match. They were already irritated. So, speaking of being irritated, I bet a couple people were irritated being added last minute. Hey, Larry Zbyszko versus Louis Spicolli is supposed to happen after what happened at Sold Out 1998. It was going to be Louis Spicolli getting beat up by Larry Zbyszko for what he did, even though Dusty was the one that turned and knocked out Larry Zbyszko. But Louis Piccoli was going to face off against Larry, who was one of the top guys in the company, despite being an announcer / part-time wrestler. Only problem with that is Louis Piccoli unfortunately overdosed about a week before this. I think he was 27, 28. I mean, shit. Don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs. Anyway, Brad Armstrong versus Goldberg showed up. Or was showing up on the card because it's like, last minute, get out there and do shit. So Brad Armstrong got pump handle thrown. Amazing he didn't break his arm with how he did that, because Goldberg, for all his positive attributes, was never really a wrestler. But he'd get out there and brawl with people. He'd get out there and do that. And he won with a spear and a jackhammer, and there you go. Brad Armstrong getting destroyed. Brad Armstrong was the one that passed away in 2012, right? That's really sad. So, there you go. Yeah, Louis Piccoli. Louis Piccoli versus Larry Zbyszko. I gotta be perfectly honest, I don't know if that would have been very good. That might have thrown off the time, but you know what you could have done? You could have had other people, the 10,000 people that you had under contract, you could have had another match. Instead of, again, giving Booker and Saturn 14 minutes and Disco versus La Parka more than 5 minutes, because La Parka deserves a long match. Disco didn't. So, Juventud Guerrera versus Chris Jericho. Title versus mask. Strike that. Reverse it. Mask versus title. If Juvi can't win, if he can't win the title, then he loses his mask, because Jericho kept trying to get counted out at one point. But, which would mean that Juvi would win, but he wouldn't win the title. So he had to pin Jericho. Jericho, who had just won the championship after taking out Rey Mysterio, because Rey Mysterio needed surgery on his knee, so they did they did most of an angle match, more of an angle match rather, at Sold Out 98. This is the start of Eric Bischoff coming up with a brilliant idea to unmask a bunch of the luchadors. To be fair, it sort of worked with Juvi. Juvi had that kind of face where you could market him, but a lot of the people, Rey Mysterio, who always looks perpetually 14 years old without his goddamn mask, and WWE still edits it, even though we know what the fuck he looks like. Thanks, Bischoff and co. And anyway, crowd was into the match. It was fine for what it was. Jericho, at one point, was going to wear the Cruiserweight Championship to protect himself, and then he got the wind knocked out of him, so he took that off. And they had a good pace here. I think the way they set it up, though, the near falls tired the crowd out. Because it seemed like, oh, this should be it. Oh, this should be it. Oh, this should be it. Not, this should be it, this should be it, this should be it. They did at least 9 near falls. At least 9, if not more. Lion Tamer, however, in the middle of the ring, and Juvi had to give up and then had to unmask while Jericho kept calling him Quasi-Juvi. See, this is back when Jericho actually provided positive things to professional wrestling. And there you go. The crowd was booing. I don't know if they were booing because Juvi unmasked. Juvi looked different than they thought, or maybe they were just booing the fact that they were worried this show wasn't going to get much better. And unfortunately, it didn't. Because the British Bulldog, making his return a couple months prior to WCW, taking on Steve Mongo McMichael. Boy, you want to talk about something rough. Look, Mongo, and I know Mongo's dealing with I believe it's ALS, if I recall correctly. And I don't try to kick, I'm not kicking the person while he's down. It's just Mongo was enthusiastic in the ring, but he was never exactly a ring general. I mean, he knew that, but he was never somebody that you should put in the ring, except if that particular person wanted to lead him. And Bulldog, by this point, and I love Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, is one of my favorites of the late 80s into the 90s. Davey Boy Smith was not somebody that was going to lead somebody. He wasn't going to be a dick. He just, unfortunately, drug issues have kind of taken hold here. They really take hold of Fall Brawl 98 when nobody told him about a trap door that fucked up Bulldog's back. All for the Ultimate Warrior. By the way, fuck the Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's dead. Bulldog ended up targeting the wrist and the arm because Mongo heard it. I think he actually ended up needing surgery sometime after this. But then the referee called it. Mongo then shoves the ref down, yelling at him, saying, "I didn't quit." I mean, okay, that's a neat little angle, I guess. And then DDP took on Chris Benoit for the U.S. Championship. They would fight over the U.S. Championship a little bit, after this. Also, Raven would get involved. Raven would win the title, I believe, at Spring Stampede 2 months later, and then would lose it to Goldberg the next night. And I'm going to say the same thing I said in my Superbrawl 3 retro review. You can check that out if you want. But it's hard for me to watch Benoit matches objectively. In fact, it's impossible. And I recognize there was some great work here, and DDP, one of the best as far as what he did with his career, considering the age that he started at to become a full-time wrestler. Because he blew his knee out before and then did nightclub stuff, did managing, and then wanted to get into wrestling as a wrestler, and did that. And he carved a hell of a career out, especially in WCW. Just ignore the whole DDP as a stalker thing in WWF. That was really, really bad. Why did they hate him? I don't get it. What ended up happening is, and again, I mean, it was well worked, but Benoit, murdering scum. Back slide counter, into a diamond cutter, 1, 2, 3. There you go. Well worked. It went about 15 minutes, I believe. Good stuff, but again, Benoit. So the announcers plugged how the Giant will appear on Nitro to address his neck issues because of the incident at Sold Out 98. Lost Sold Out 98, looking back here, where Nash tried to do a jackknife and Giant landed on his goddamn neck. Fortunately, he was all right, I think. And then they do a weird video package. Luger had taped ribs to take on Randy Savage with Liz. No DQ match. I'm going to point out to you, by the way, this is the only no DQ match on the card. Only no DQ match listed. Remember that. What ends up happening is this was a quick match because Savage at this point had 2 bad knees. If I recall correctly, he really wrecked one at Halloween Havoc 97 when I believe he helped Hogan against Piper, if I recall correctly. I know that he would end up fucking his knee up even more in a steel cage match at Uncensored 98 a month later. And Savage also had been wrestling since about 74, 75. Somewhere around that. I might be misunderstanding. The whole point is Savage, and I love Randy Savage. One of my favorites of all time. It's part of the reason why I still got the sweet Randy Savage shirt I got. And FYE back when FYE still existed. In at least somewhat surplus. Now I think we have like 3 in our state. And they're way far away. But I love Randy Savage. Randy Savage, to me, was better than Hulk Hogan. Could have carried the company for his second championship run a lot longer. I would have had on him for about 2 goddamn years, but it is what it is. But Randy here was limited. I mean, God, he was really limited by 1999. Holy shit. But him and Luger, I mean, they crafted a match that was all right. The crowd was booing the fuck out of Luger, as it were. That didn't quite work. Liz attacked Luger in full view of the referee, but no DQ, so there you go. And Savage stopped an NWO run-in. You get about 20 guys from the NWO ran down, including Scott Flash Norton, who was just thinking, God, I could be over in Japan earning a better payday doing something better than this shit. And then the bell rings, but there's no DQ match. And Hogan calls off the troops. And then Luger gets a torture rack on Savage. And the bell rings to signal the match ending. What the fuck kind of drugs was WCW on at this point? Okay. What the fuck? Speaking of what the fuck, the Outsiders, Hall and Nash, with Dusty taking on the Steiner Brothers, Rick and Scott with Ted DiBiase. And Scott didn't have the ponytail. It was a WCW WCW Tag Team Championship match. Scott had the shorter hair and was kind of standoffish. I wonder why. This is the infamous match where they made Rick Steiner look like the biggest motherfucking idiot besides Sting. And I'm going to explain why. People that saw this pay-per-view, people that have seen the show, people that, you know, if you're like me, and I know I am, and you remember WCW, you remember how they had Steiner, Steiner, too many Steiner pronouns, pal. They had Scott Steiner doing, you know, the whole barking thing. Rick was on you know, Dog-Faced Gremlin, Doge-Faced Gremlin, much wow, such Rick. But he's on the ground doing all this and everything. And then, all of a sudden, you know, Steiner's just like this, Scott's like this, and then winks at the camera and double axe handles Rick. This did not look like he was going to double axe handle. That really was kind of weird. It was like Steiner incest. Whole point. Rick didn't realize that Scott hit him. Scott, who was standing right above him. Nobody else was there. I swear at least one of the guys was in view. I don't remember if it was Hall or Nash. But they did that, and then suddenly, boom. And even if they weren't, how did he not know that was not his brother? I mean, this was an angle match, and yes, we got the Big Bad Booty Daddy, Big Papa Pump as your hookup. Holler if you hear me. But goddamn, Rick, who had been in wrestling for a few years before Scott, who was the veteran. Because you got to remember, by 2001, 2, Rick was pretty much out of wrestling. Scott at least was in wrestling for a little bit longer. Hell, Scott was in wrestling for a long goddamn time now that you think about it. He had stints in Impact and wrestled in the NWA in January 2020 before the pandemic. Oh boy, that was sad. And they're Hall of Famers and the Steiners and the Road Warriors, my favorite 2 tag teams of all time. But fuck, they made them look stupid. So then the Outsiders are attacking. Even Scott attacks DiBiase. DiBiase taking a bump. DiBiase with his bad neck or back, I forget what. Dusty posts him. So the crowd popped for the whole thing. And then Rick kept trying to fight back and then eventually got hit with the Outsider's Edge. 1, 2, 3. Scott hands on the belt. Or hands on the belts. But the crowd popped for the moment. But what I realized rewatching this is I don't think the crowd realized just how little something like this would make sense in the grand scheme of things. Yes, Scott turning heel probably was telegraphed for a little bit, but they're popping for the moment, and then if they think about it, they're like, wait a second, they made the referee look stupid, they made Rick look stupid, and now all of a sudden, like, the tag team titles don't mean anything. And I was even thinking a few things like this when I was 17 watching this at a buddy's house, like, that made Rick look dumb. Like, yeah, it was cool, like, oh, cool, Scott's going to turn in, and we're like, wait a second. Why'd they make Rick look dumb like that, then? Because, yeah, he could have laid him out, and then we're like, holy shit! But all Rick would have to do is watch the footage and be like, all right, I want to get at Scott, and then they milked that goddamn thing for months. I think it was like Halloween Havoc. Halloween Havoc, I think, is when they finally faced off. Fallboro Halloween Havoc. Anyway, so then, God fucking, Michael Buffer, because Bruce Buffer's a good one. Michael Buffer's intro took 14 fucking years. Let's get ready to take forever. And Sting, after Hogan makes his way to the ring, they probably told Sting when he was coming down to the ring, okay, slow walk, but then shit, we're running out of time, get to the ring. Shit, fuck, gotta get to the ring. So, Sting Hogan, singles match for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. Note how I didn't say no DQ, because there was only one no DQ match. But they just let the referee just ignore all this. We got Charles Robinson taking bumps, we got a brawl, we got Hogan whipping Sting, we got a brawl into the crowd, and people say it was better than the Starrcade 97 match. Well, yes, you didn't have to try fucking hard to be better than that. Nick Patrick ended up running down because, oh no, he might make another slow count or fast count, or that wasn't actually a fast count, but suddenly Savage hits Hogan. And fans are starting to fucking boo because they're tired of seeing this shit. Sting wins. They make him look like an idiot. He gets presented with the title, and fans are throwing trash in the ring. Sure, it isn't like Bash at the Beach 96, but there was a noticeable amount of trash flying. A few water balls and other shit and whatever. And just, like, I understand what they were doing. Like, okay, now Sting's going to go off on this long run with the championship. This should have started at Starrcade 97. Here's the fucking problem with that. Sting was already cooled off by this point. Yeah, the crowd was popping for Sting, but not like they were. Because they saw what happened at Starrcade 97. He had that match, I believe, against Hall at Uncensored 98. Faced off against Savage at Spring Stampede 98. Lost the title to Savage 2 months after winning this epic clash. And was he WCW champion after that? In 99. I believe in 2000. Was he in 2000? He tossed the title so much around so goddamn much, like Sonny in the locker room, that I actually can't quite remember. But Sting, yes, he was going through some shit. 98, he talked about how he got saved, whatever helped you sleep at night. And he had drug and alcohol issues, and he got those fixed. And good for him. But this whole thing of Sting, he was such a big star. Yeah, he was the icon of WCW, and they fucking neutered him. And I will never fucking understand it. He wasn't tan enough. Yeah, Superbrawl 8 actually pissed me off quite a bit. Not as much as Superbrawl 9. You can check that out. I did that retro review at least a year or two ago. But yeah, I don't have that many more Superbrawls to cover. 4 and 5, maybe. No, seriously, I think Superbrawl's 4 and 5, and I don't know if I want to do those right now. So, agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.